Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Um, I'm actually a teacher, former head teacher, teacher trainer, and actually I started teaching when I was 14. So all my life, in fact, I've been teaching. I'm also a preacher, a very proud preacher of Islam, and I love that. Again, I started that possibly when I was about 15. My first big sermon was at the Walking Mosque back in 1976 or 5, somewhere like that. So I'm really, and also a broadcaster, translator. My first book I translated from Urdu was in 1977 from Urdu. So I'm a translator as well. And now I've translated the Majestic Quran, which mashallah has become bestseller. And I think we've sold nearly, more than 150,000 so far in just 4 years. And it's mashallah loved. And it's so humbling to see those amazing reviews. Okay. I trained as a scientist. So, for me, I've never had a dread, never felt that there's an angst between science and Quran or Islam. Never, ever. It never even dawned on. I don't know. It might have been because of my wonderful science teacher, Mr. Patton, who, I was favorite of and, had a great privilege, I studied biochemistry and pharmacology and then PhD in it. I looked at the glucose molecule. Can you imagine that, For 4 years, just looking at the glucose molecule, how it stimulates the islets of Langerhans, the beta cells in them. Is there a receptor or is it metabolized and then it stimulates the secretion of insulin? That's all I did, okay? And there was no philosophy. And I'll tell you, my professor, Atkins, I had no clue what philosophy is, to be honest. Neither did Professor Hansen from Oxford University, who was one of our lecturers. He had no clue what epistemology of science is or history of science is. All he was interested in is how many papers can I produce and what methodology I use and what criticism I'm going to get. And as a scientist, we were never taught what is philosophy or what is epistemology or what is... anyway, that's I know there are philosophers of science and historians of science and all that, but, we get on with finding out what happens to the mice, okay? I used possibly 1,000 mice in my research, okay? When I was, and a few 100 rats and rabbits as well. So that's what we were interested in, actually. What is the consequence of using these and what results we get? How does that impact my, Islamic work? That's really what I want to talk to you about. I use it as an apologetics as well, yes, to defend Islam. But I wasn't really too keen on that, I don't think I've written anything on it in that sense. But what I have done is, I'll tell you, for example, you all want to be happy, don't you? Of course, yeah, you want to be happy then. There's a happiness laboratory in Yale University, and there's a professor of happiness, Professor Laurie Santos. And I was listening to her lecture. Well, I actually read about her article in Time magazine the other day, and I thought I'll look up what this lady's up to. How does she make people happy? And of course, the Quran uses the word hum yahburuna fil jannah. The believers will be happy in paradise. In the world, we're actually told to do two things. Ulaika humul muflihun, they are successful. Ulaika humul faizun, they are winners. Yeah, we are supposed to be people who accomplish, who achieve their goals and targets. Happiness isn't a big thing here, and it's something which we will have in the akhirah. Okay, it's really interesting that. And what does he say? Well, she says there are 3 ingredients of happiness. Would you like to know that? Okay, well, first one she says is, you just need to know who you are. What is your identity? You need to really know who you are, your identity. Secondly, she says, you need to know what the meaning and purpose of life is. What is your targets in life? And finally, how connected, linked, and what sort of social relationships you have. As being a translator of Quran, I did Hifz in my childhood. I loved the Quran. I was a great lover of this book from my childhood. You spend hours and hours, almost every day, 3 or 4 hours at least with it. And I said, my goodness, that's the Quran. All the time it's telling me, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I've made my deputy my representative. وَلَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. Allah has given me honor and dignity. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. I've been created in the most beautiful mold with a beautiful physique, with beautiful thinking and all that. Yes, I know who I am. Yes, I know. That's what it's trying to give you from beginning to the end, constantly hammering home this idea, who you are. You are not just any animal. You're not just any human being. You're very, very special. So that's a very clear message that the Quran gives. And as a preacher and a teacher and an imam, that is what I have to actually help my community and my people who listen to me, people who read my blogs, to get an understanding of, you are very important. And who's saying this? The Lord of the universe, your creator, your provider, your sustainer, your cherisher, the one who is Al-Wadud, the loving, the one who loves you truly. He's telling you, you're so special. You're no less than anyone else. You're very important. That's an amazing concept, the Quran is giving from beginning to the end. Secondly, this idea that you've got a purpose in life. Yeah? The Quran says, it asks this question many times. Do people think that they have been created futile, purposeless, meaningless, that their life has no meaning? And then it tells this is the meaning. Okay, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Okay, it is to recognize and have that realization that there is a Lord of mine. So yes, and finally, this idea about relationships, that is really interesting because the Quran is one of the greatest book on moral intelligence. Okay, it is, when the Prophet ﷺ was accused of being a sahir, a wizard, a magician, of being possessed, of being a liar and all those sort of things. The Quran retorts, it says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Okay, you're not that. Your character is so beautiful. You've got a strong character. And here you would have expected the response to being crazy or Majnun or somebody who's lost his mind would be, no, he's very intelligent. His IQ is very high. He knows the philosophy and all this. No. Allah says, your character is strong, meaning that moral intelligence is far higher than the IQ that sadly our society so much cherishes. Seriously, yeah. Now that is the message the Quran is giving, that this intelligence, the moral intelligence, which is really about moral virtues. Dr. Raza was talking about the moral virtues. The moral virtues are something that is, obviously makes us very unique and special, representative of God, because God is as-sabur. We have to be sabir. He's the most patient. He's the ghafur. We also have to be the forgivers, okay, because we're representing him. He is the Rahman. We have to also do that. So, the Quran is developing this amazing moral intelligence from beginning to the end. And I've written a book called 7 Steps to Moral Intelligence actually on this subject, on how the Quran actually develops. And this is based on Imam Ghazali's idea of the 7 steps to developing character, a strong character, really. So, what is really fascinating for me is I would present, Professor Laurie Santos' idea that, and I'm trying to, in a way, show, look, modern science is catching up with us. It's not the other way around, okay? Modern science is just about catching up, where where Rasulullah was 1400 years ago and Quran was, it's just coming up to it now. So let's be confident about it. Whereas, the idea of science and Quran, and I never paid much attention to it until recently, and now almost on every page, Dr. Riaz, I actually see something in the Quran which just sort of pricks me and says, my goodness, that wouldn't mean a lot to the people of Makkah. For example, the Makkans were very, one of their biggest criticism of Rasulullah and Islam was, he always talks about resurrection. Actually, they were weirdest people because they were materialists, actually, like modern society, because all around them were people who actually did believe in resurrection. The Egyptians believed it. All the Persians believed it. They were the weird ones. They were materialists, modern materialists in many ways, really, who didn't believe in that. And, the Quran says, for example, tell them, even if they become stones and turn into iron, we are going to bring them back to life. And this idea is, why does the Quran say, even if they become iron? Who knew that human bodies have iron in them? Are you with it? I mean, nobody, as a scientist, I could understand. People who are not perhaps scientists wouldn't be able to see it in that way. When it says about the creation of heavens and the earth and the ru'usul ayah, the tail, final end of the verses, وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ, and we are constantly expanding this universe. Ordinary people perhaps wouldn't, but if you've got some background in science, you'll say, wow, I can understand that. I can relate with that idea. And the other day when I read the Surah Al-Hadid, Surah Al-Hadid is called the iron, all right? And it said, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. This is really interesting because my teacher had translated this as, and we created the iron. But I said, no, the Quran is saying we sent it down. Why are you trying? All the Mufassirin, even my teacher 6 years ago when he did his Urdu translation, he wrote that. He said, look, we dig it out of the ground, it's there. And that's what it means. It's created. No, it couldn't, because there are at least 6-7 other words for creation that Allah could have used, but he didn't. He used anzalna. And of course, modern science now tells us this is stardust. In fact, all the elements on Earth were created somewhere in a supernova or in stars, and they were scattered and showered on our Earth, and it's been accumulating it like that. I said, subhanallah. But then, the atomic weight of iron is what? Do you remember your periodic table, Stephen? No, you don't. 57, eh? And this is in surah number? Yes. And it's verse number 26. What is atomic number of iron? 26. But there is a isotope which is number 27 as well. If you're a Shafi, this is verse number 27. Because you will include Bismillah in it. Now, come on, there are three really. All these are coincidences. Yes, well, okay, and that's how you. But do you see? I'm now beginning. In fact, on every page, I'm beginning to see these weird miracles. And I'm saying, because the Quran is a living book. Remember that the Quran is a living book. It speaks to every age at all throughout. So and that is what I'm seeing, to be honest. And so it's not just science, Dr. Mansoor. Also, you look at the surah on divorce, and you'll see the British system, for example, is now catching up. Their divorce laws are just catching up with some of the Islamic laws, mashallah. In every field, this is a living book. And our relationship with science and humanities, with all learning, that's what it is. Science is actually, it's a learning. It's nothing, it's not a philosophy as such, But yes, of course, the atheists have their philosophy about it. But a believer, I always had the same philosophy about it. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. So that philosophy, we are going to have because of our backgrounds, Anyway, science is a wonderful field, but I'm discouraging young Muslims, my namazis, please, for young boys who come to me or girls, for God's sake, don't go into science. You're all going to science, engineering, technology. Who's going to learn law? Who's going to do the humanities? You don't know English at all. We can't speak proper English in our community. We need to learn English. We need to have people going into journalism. So we're having a real problem, I said, dissuading young people to go into science. So for me, it's opposite, actually. I'm trying to think seriously. We really do need people. We've got just too many in science and medicine in particular. The most intelligent ones, I say to them, you could be one of the great Ghazali of the time, if you came and studied Islam seriously, or went to, study Islamic studies in Birmingham, you'd be the greatest Razi of our time if you did that. But in medicine, you might turn into a consultant or a optometrist, a consultant or something. But come on, we want Razis, seriously, that's what we should be encouraging. Assalamu alaikum.